Hi everyone, welcome to our Mothering Practice podcast series. We are a team of HQ students from mainland China, and in this show, we dive into how Chinese mothers live, struggle, and reshape their identities under big, complicated social structures.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host Pamela, saying hi from Hong Kong.
And I am Steven, from the mainland. Today we want to talk about something that sounds huge, but actually sits right inside every family.
So Steven, let me start with a question that many of my Hong Kong friends often ask their mainland friends. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Nope, I'm the standard only child. Super common for people my age, especially in the northern cities.
Every time I hear that, I'm still a bit shocked. Hong Kong families change too, but not to the point where almost everyone has only one child. So this is because of the one-child policy, right?
Yeah, from around 1979 to 2015, China has a long-running family planning policy. Many of us today are direct product of it.
Okay, so get down to business. Why we start from here? Because this show always focuses on one big question. Under big national policies, how do everyday Chinese mothers actually live and make choices? How do they rebuild their identities?
Exactly. Motherhood in China has changed dramatically in the past few decades. And among all the influences, you can't simply avoid talking about the one-child policy.
And honestly, many Hong Kong listeners don't really know how large, long, and complicated that policy was.
Yeah, totally. It's often described as one of the biggest and most controversial social engineering projects in human history. It shaped everything, but in ways that are too complex to call simply good or bad. So now, let me provide a short background. After the Cultural Revolution, China wanted to restart the economic development. The leaders at that time believed rapid population growth would block reforms. So, in 1979, and especially after a famous open letter in 1980s, the one-child policy was officially rolled out nationwide.
But was it really enforced the same everywhere?
Well, the national direction was unified, but how it was carried out varied a lot.
And that's exactly what we want to talk about today. So here's something interesting we discovered while preparing this episode. Many Hong Kong listeners don't really know what an SOE is.
Yeah, and to understand the one-child policy, SOE, state-owned enterprises, is like a key. It wasn't just a company, it was the core of how the whole system worked. Pamela, what is your first impression of SOEs?
Honestly, I thought they were kinda like Hong Kong public institutions. But later I realized that's not even close, right?
Not even close. Back then, an SOE wasn't just your workplace. It gave you housing, medical care, your kids' schooling, your pension, basically cradle to grave support. Your whole life was tied to your work unit.
So when it came to the one-child policy, SOEs were the main enforcers?
Exactly. Not hospitals. The work units decided where you could have kids, how many kids you could have, and even tracked whether you followed the rules.
Wow! So having a second child wasn't just a family issue, it was a career issue?
Totally. Very real, very direct.
But I also have mainland friends who do have siblings, and it wasn't illegal. How does that work?
Great question. This brings us to the huge point. The economic structure of North and South China were totally different.
So like more SOEs in the north and more individual businesses in the south?
Yep, I'm from Liaoning, and a huge percentage of population worked in SOEs or government jobs. But in Guangdong, Fujian, Zhejiang, most people were self-employed or ran a family business. Those outside the system experienced the policy very differently.
So what happened if an SOE mother broke the policy?
The best case could be a warning or a salary cut, and the worst case could be like losing your permanent job, losing housing, losing the previous social and working benefits, so on and so forth.
No wonder they were scared to have a second kid.
Exactly.
What about southern families outside the system?
Different issues, huge fines, surprise inspections, and sometimes even forced measures. Some places were really rough.
So same policy but two totally different enforcement systems?
Exactly.
Now I'm curious, if we interview mothers from different backgrounds, would their stories be completely different?
Yeah, they really are. Today we explore how the SOE mothers and non-SOE mothers differ in fertility choices, parenting styles, and family relationships. And what do those differences tell us? We invited two mothers who faced the fertility issues at 1980s. Interviewee 1 is from Liaoning. She's an SOE worker, to be exact, water company. She followed the policy, invested everything into her only daughter. And the second interviewee is from Guangdong province. She's self-employed family and had two kids but faced fines, inspections, and administrative pressure.
What a powerful comparison.
Right. Okay, let's begin with our first interviewee. Our first guest is an auntie from Liaoning. She was born in the 1960s and worked in a state-owned water company. Her family is a classic one-child SOE family. Thank you so much for being here, auntie.
大家好，
Hello, nice to meet you.
You had your child during the strictest period. Can you tell us what it was like?
我女儿是80年代出生
My daughter was born in the
我们单位
early
的时候
80s.
执行得非
Our
常
work
严
unit enforced the
生
policy
完
very
生完之
strictly.
后
One
单位
year
会
after
做
giving
严格的
birth,
身体检
all
查
women have
如
to
果检
get a
查身体
checkup,
没问题
and if everything
就
was
必须要
fine,
上环
we were required to
这个
get an
不
IUD.
是自愿的
It
是
wasn't
必须做的
optional.
费
The
用都
unit
是单位
arranged
报
and paid
销
for it.
Wait, why was the unit arranging this? Why not go to a hospital by yourself?
都是单位统一组织的
Because it was part of the
上环
national
就是在
policy,
子宫里放一个
and the
节
work
育环
unit was
防
responsible
止
for
女
enforcing
性
it.
再次怀孕
They
当
handled
时
your
这是
salary,
国家
your
政策
housing,
执行
and
主
also
体
your
就是
birth
单位
quota.
单位不
So the
仅管
exams
住
and
房
IUD
工资
were all
也负责
organized
执行生
collectively.
育指标
Did you or your husband ever wanted a second child?
没有一个是
No.
不敢生
We
怕
were
影响
afraid
工
of
作
losing our
二
jobs,
是
and
一个
one
孩
child
子我能
felt
照顾好
manageable.
压力也小
We wanted
最
to
重
focus
要
on
的是
work
工作
and
稳
give our
定
daughter a
和
good
把孩子
education.
教育好
So it wasn't like you were forced to want just one kid, it actually fit your lifestyle?
对是这样的一胎
Yes.
让我能早点回到
With
工作
one
岗
child,
位
I could return
继
to
续
work,
学习
study,
可以
and
把
grow.
差不多
And we
30%
could spend
收入
about a third of our
左右
income
都
on
投
her
入在我女儿
education.
的教育上
That's
这在
impossible
多
for
孩
bigger
家庭
families.
是不可能做到的
You've said you are extremely close with your daughter.
对我和我女儿的关系很亲
Yes,
密
we were like
我
mother
们既
and
是母
daughter,
女
but also
也
like
像
friends.
朋友
I helped
我
with
经常
homework,
会教她
talk
功
with her a
课
lot.
和她聊
It
天
was very different from
这和
my
我小时
childhood.
候完全不
We
一
had
样
7 kids at
我小时
home,
候家
and
里
my
有
mother
7个孩
barely
子
had time for
根
us.
本没时间陪伴我们
Did you know anyone who secretly has a second child?
是会有的
Yes,
后来
a
听一个
colleague of
朋
my
友
friend
讲起她
secretly
同事
had
的
her
事
second baby in her
她
rural
同事
hometown.
呢也是60
They
年
hid
代
the
人
child for
也是我
years.
们辽宁人
She couldn't go
是在
outside
一家
before
国
primary
营的
school.
运输公司
The husband
做普
kept
通
his
职员
job, but the
他第一
mother-in-law was
胎就生了
furious.
一个儿子
She felt the
但
daughter-in-law
她非常
risked
喜
the
欢孩子
entire family's iron rice bowl.
Wait, how did they handle the household registration?
偷生的孩子不敢去报户口
No, they didn't at
我
first.
这个同事的
A
女儿
child
呢
without
她
hukou
就一
is
直拖到
considered
上
a
小
black
学前
household.
刚好
Can't
赶
go
上
to
政府
school
的
or
人口普
access
查就
services.
是政府
They
挨
only
家挨户
registered her
来
right
审你家
before
有
her
多少
started
人
school
那时
during
候
a national
孩
census
子就
and paid a
藏不
fine.
住了嘛然后他们
During
就
the
冒
census
险给孩
season,
子补
you
了户
simply
口
couldn't hide anymore.
Listening to this, I understand why so many SOE mothers didn't dare have another child. The stakes were just too high: job, housing, and stability.
For me, the idea of IUDs being mandatory or kids being unable to attend school without hukou is shocking. We don't have anything like this in Hong Kong. This story really deepened my understanding of that era.
Auntie, thank you so much for sharing. So that was the inside the system story. Strict, cautious, full of institutional pressure. But at the same time, mothers outside the system, especially in the South, lived completely different realities.
Right. Without SOEs or iron rice balls, what kind of pressure did they face? More freedom or actually more danger?
Our next guest is from a self-employed family in Guangdong. Her story shows what happens when the state cannot control the birth through work units. Welcome to our second guest, an auntie born in the 70s in Guangdong. Her family ran a clothing business.
你好
Hello, nice to meet you both.
What was the general attitude toward having children in Guangdong back then?
我哋嗰邊嘅
We always believed the more kids, the more blessings. Business families felt children were investments. More kids means more help and a stronger family.
So that clashed with the policy?
係啊
Yes. In the South, people really felt children were wealth.
I heard the South used to be more lenient, like you could have 3.
係啊，一開始
Yes. At first, it was more flexible, but later enforcement became strict and all women had to get IUDs.
What if someone got pregnant again?
要拉人
They would get caught and forced to have an abortion, and then forced to install an IUD. If it was a third child, enforcement was harsher.
Since no work unit managed you, who enforced it?
計生
Local birth control officers, women's federations, township officials. They were always catching extra births. If they couldn't find a wife, they would take the husband.
Why the husband?
因為老婆可以
To pressure the wife to come back. One of my friends, his wife hid while pregnant with their second child. The officials couldn't find her, so they detained him and told him if she didn't return for the abortion, they would castrate him.
That's terrifying.
What about your own case?
我第一胎生嘅咧
My first child was a boy, which means because we had an urban hukou, we were only allowed one. My second child, a girl, was illegal.
So how did you handle her 户口?
我哋就將
We borrowed a hukou from a rural family my husband knew. It cost us about 100,000 yuan.
100,000? That's a huge amount of money back then.
係啊，但係
Yes, but without hukou, she couldn't go to school. Many people tried different ways, like having babies in Hong Kong or Hainan, things like that.
考咗去咧香港生，咁有啲咧就走咗去咧海南生。
Why did family insist on having more despite the huge risks?
因為幾個原因嘅
Culture, economics, and honestly, love.
經濟都係一個
We believed more kids were good, and I really just wanted another child.
我自己就係咁啦，我心裏就係我中意細路仔啊，我要生啊，
Do you regret it now?
唔後悔。
No, I love both my kids. It was scary, but that was our choice.
Her story shows a totally different system. No SOEs to fire you, but the huge fines, raids, and hukou problems. A different structure, but equally intense.
It's wild how the same national policy created such different realities. Inside SOEs, you feared losing your job. Outside, you feared getting caught. Her story really helps us understand what women were facing.
Auntie, thank you for sharing such a painful memories with us.
Wow, Stephen, these 2 stories, the contrast is unbelievable. Different social identities created completely different worlds under the same policy.
Exactly. And that's our core point today. In the early years of the policy, the system, being in an SOE, was one of the biggest factors shaping women's reproductive choices.
I never realized that simply being inside or outside the system could decide whether you could have a child or even dared to.
As sociologist Zhou Xuguang knows, in the socialist systems, people cannot rely on the market advantages. They have to rely on the system itself. The strict family planning enforcement became a key way individuals maintaining their SOE identities and that deeply shaped mothering practice.
And after hearing all three stories, it's clear the system shaped motherhood more powerfully than education, personality, or personal beliefs.
Interviewee 1 followed the rules and gained a stable, predictable family life, pouring everything into her only daughter.
But her friend, who secretly had a second child, had to hide for years and suffered family tensions. That's a unique kind of punishment tied to the system.
Meanwhile, interviewee 2 faced a totally different set of pressure: fines, race, 户口 issues, a separate punishment system.
So yes, two completely different realities. Two major differences between system insiders and outsiders. Inside the system, rule-following families stayed stable around one child.
But when a family resisted, the system created conflict and pressure from within, like with the angry mother-in-law.
Outside the system, the pressure came from outside, which sometimes made a couple even closer.
Inside the system, one-child family developed high investment, intensive parenting.
But outside or in multi-child families facing 户口 issues, parents leaned toward more independent or hands-off styles, and kids relied more on siblings or community.
Whether they followed the rules or resisted them, these mothers all carried the weight of their times.
Policies never land evenly. Today's stories show how mothers made choices in the tiny spaces left between state power and everyday life.
We are truly grateful for those stories.
And thank you all for listening.
See you next time.
time.